Welcome back, everyone, to the Xamarin Show. I'm your host, James Montemagno, and with me, friend and fan of the show, I'm so excited to have you, my good friend, Adam Fish, all the way here from San Francisco. Thanks for being with me.
I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, beautiful, sunshiny Seattle, Washington.
Exactly what I expected.
Lovely, lots of clouds, always. I have a lot of guests come from San Francisco, because Xamarin were headquartered there originally, and still there, actually. And they're always like, it's so nice in California, this. I'm like, welcome to Seattle. It's beautiful. That's why I moved here. Not a shade of the sun anywhere in the sky. How's it feel?
That's great. I'm happy to fly in, early morning flights.
Yeah.
Feeling good.
Now, first, before we get into here, you're here from Realm, which
Yeah.
I am so crazy excited about. The first time I saw Realm, it blew my mind. And then you guys did like more stuff, and it blew my mind. And I'm so excited. But first, maybe tell the people a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Yeah, so my name's Adam Fish, the Senior Director of Product at Realm, and been with the company for about 2 years now. So as James was mentioning, Realm is a database company. So the company is about 5 years old, got started, typical Silicon Valley startup. The founders are Danish, came over from Copenhagen, raised some capital, and basically built the database from scratch.
Oh, nice.
And so it got started the first 3 years as a high-speed, in-memory server-based database, but we quickly realized that its unique kind of capabilities coupled with the growth of mobile, that there was a great opportunity to basically build a replacement for SQLite or any of the derivatives.
Nice.
And so 2 years ago, a little over 2 years at this point, we launched it for iOS, and then we've added Android. Since then, Xamarin.net support, React Native, and so it's really designed to be a cross-platform, easy-to-use mobile database.
I love that. I love that when I first saw the Xamarin support, what excites me is that, yeah, you have iOS, Android, all the support, is that you just drop it in and you have one database that's cross-platform and you just go. Now, you said it's a SQLite like replacement essentially, so it's not SQLite. Because I think a lot of our developers, I'm so used to SQLite and SQL itself, and SQLite is native, or even core data, I guess, on iOS if you're tapping into core data and iCloud stuff. So Realm is not that. Realm is its own unique thing. Can you kind of explain what Realm, like this database and its structure, and why Realm? Why would someone choose Realm over SQLite, I guess?
Yeah, so I mean, it's pretty common to kind of forget that really the only database that anyone uses on mobile is SQLite. Now, there's always different wrappers that people put around it. Core data being a major one for the iOS platform. But at the end of the day, that's at the core, it's SQLite. And so with Realm, like the biggest argument to build something new was that at the end of the day, when you're building mobile apps, you're working with objects, and there's always this mismatch between the object layer and the SQL layer. Yeah. And so a lot of effort with core data and others go to trying to like manage that with an ORM. But at the end of the day, you've always got some level of mismatch that can happen. And so with Realm, we decided to build it from the ground up as something new. And at the core level, it is a table interface, but the actual columns can link to other tables.
Gotcha.
And so it inherently supports links.
Beautiful.
And so you don't have that actual mismatch. And so we're able to then provide an object interface in whatever the native language is that you're using for the platform, and it just becomes a very fluid experience. And so kind of coupled with that, there's been a real focus on performance, and so it's a column-based database, and so it can do have really high performance, and it uses memory mapping. So you're basically interacting with the data directly on disk, and there's no sort of like in-memory copying that's happening.
Got it. Yeah.
And so that's what's kind of guides some of its performance characteristics.
And would you say that's like the strongest sell for Realm? Is it the ease of use? Do you see your developers that are using the product? Do they go because of the performance? And they're just like, I'm sick of SQL and the table management and trying to. I have a customer and it has receipts and it that mapping. I guess. What's the biggest draw, I guess, to Realm for developers?
Well, I can speak from personal experience because I actually got started as a Realm developer
Nice.
before
Yeah.
joining the company. So I was
That's the best way, right? I did Xamarin work for so long before joining Xamarin. When you love a product, it's so easy to talk about it. Yeah.
Exactly. It grabbed my attention immediately. I was working on my own startup. We had an iOS app, and we were just spending an inordinate amount of time fighting with core data, your typical kind of like threading issues and things that you'll run into. And when it launched, it was like the simplicity. I remember going to like the website. It looked a little different than it does now, but there was just
Good
like
looking website.
the
Yeah.
code snippets, and I was like, oh yes, like that makes a ton of sense. And then the moment you start playing with it and you realize, hey, not only is the interface really easy, but I'm not like having to pay any performance penalty for that ease of use. It just became a no-brainer. And so, yeah, we rewrote the whole app using Realm, started to doing some really cool stuff, contributed some open source projects that use Realm. And so I just became like an avid user. And the company, ended up saying, hey, why don't you come and join us? But since then, speaking with developers, they echo the same thing. It's that easy use and performance, the two that come hand in hand that really sell it.
Yeah, and you said Realm's been around for a long time. There's hundreds of thousands of developers and apps being built already, so it's not like Realm's brand new and we're announcing brand new stuff. You guys are doing some awesome new stuff, but you have some really large, huge companies and startups and everyone, a lot of people using Realm. Right?
Yeah, we basically track through looking at the public apps that are on the App Store if they've integrated Realm in it, and every month, there's more Fortune 1000, Fortune 500 companies, major brands that are moving to it and using it in their applications on all the different platforms, and so it has really taken off. It is fully open source.
That's awesome.
So, the first 3 years of the company, as I was mentioning, when it was more of a kind of server-oriented, the core database is in C++, and so when we first launched, just the bindings that wrap that C++ layer into the the native language of the platform were open source. But last summer we open sourced the core, so the whole stack of the actual database is fully open source on GitHub, and so the couple, with the open source nature and the fact that it's been 5 years since it's been built, we think it really is battle tested at this point.
That's awesome.
So.
Yeah, I think people like that. They don't feel locked. I remember a lot of open sourcing projects here at Microsoft, even Xamarin, just like, that reassurance that, if I don't like something, well, I can go and try to modify something. If I want to see how it's done, I think sometimes that's the most part, like, why is this one thing working this way? You can just dive into the code, which is so cool, so critical, yeah.
Yeah, I had to, hand it to a lot of the developers on our team. Like, I became a better developer just watching, how the Cocoa team at Realm had actually built that, that version of it. Because a lot of like the Objective-C runtime and stuff, like they do some really amazing work, and being able to kind of watch that in real time is amazing as a developer.
Well, so let's get started. Let's just jump into it. Where would a developer go to learn and get started, I guess?
The easiest thing is just realm.io. That's the number one place.
Easy peasy.
Yeah, so you can just jump right in. We try to get you into the code right on the front of the page, so you can see kind of a little bit about how you would use the database and some of the newer features that we recently released.
Oh, cool.
And so if you jump over to the docs, very quickly you can kind of dive into the platform that you're looking for. So you go down here on Xamarin, there's a quick getting started. The package is available through NuGet, so it's
a little NuGet up there.
Yeah.
I like that. And the code is on GitHub. You just go right there if you want to browse the code. It's good. And this is they give you a whole Xamarin.net. So Xamarin iOS, Xamarin Android, and you have some like Win32 support, I think, too?
Yeah, Win32 support, and we're trying to obviously work on spreading that over time to all the other platforms.
Yeah, makes sense. Cool. So we have some diving, and I noticed if you go back one page, I noticed that you have platform and database. So developers probably start with this database, and I think we're going to talk about the platform later, right?
Yeah.
I'm super excited about. So database. So this is kind of, I want everyone to build apps in Xamarin. Sometimes you got to support a legacy Java app every once in a while. So, but you can still use it in anywhere. And like, is the API similar essentially, or is it made for the platforms?
No. There are small edges that are kind of platform specific, but at the end of the day, kind of the general concept of how you work with Realm objects and write transactions, like all of that is very similar. So someone that is fluent in .NET could look at a Java code snippet and
Lowercase
immediately
things and
exactly add some brackets over an Objective-C land. So.
I actually see that the C is in brackets. It's so funny. That's great. Cool. So let's jump in. You said you brought some demos, and you want to show. You were showing me a little bit earlier, and I was like, oh, it's so cool. So yeah. So you create a Xamarin application. And then what? What happens? I got it.
Yeah. So yeah, let me jump over here. So this is the sample app that we include. It's in the repo.
Okay.
It's called Quick Journal. It's basically just like a very basic task, tracker app.
Like that.
And so the first thing really to dive in is that looking at the data model of this application, we are creating an object called a journal entry, and so that's what's going to be represented in the table. And when you work with Realm, like this is kind of like the key starting point of understanding how Realm works, is that you subclass a Realm object, and that subclass is actually the definition of your data model or schema.
Okay.
And so here with the journal entry, we've got a string property for title, another for body text. And then we're actually, demonstrating kind of linking to another object where we have another Realm object called entry metadata.
So that parent-child relationship, essentially, very common. That's like one of the hardest things to do. I get that all the time. Is I see there's no keys here, so that entry metadata. Do developers have to worry about private or foreign keys? And I'm thinking SQL. That's my mind, right? It's so hard sometimes. So it just knows, and that entry metadata is a Realm object at the same time, right?
Yeah. So it's over here. It has a date property and then an author string property as well. And so this is the nice part about how Realm works. Under the hood at the core level is that those links are represented just like a reference.
Okay.
And what's really cool is if you actually build an app that has a really complex like object graph. When you query and you're working with these Realm objects, you don't actually have to pull all those objects into memory. You can actually traverse the object graph lazily.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
Well, it does it for you.
Yeah.
And so as you go to new objects, you basically don't have to use as much memory. So it's
load on demand.
Yeah, there's no foreign key lookups or anything. It's just working with almost totally native objects.
Yeah. So can you go into that Realm object and you right click and go to definition and see what's in that puppy? There we go. I like to poke inside of things. All right, so so there's some stuff inside of here essentially, right? That's some stuff that you don't have to worry about under the hood.
Yeah, so I mean, there's some other kind of aspects to it. So if you create a Realm journal entry object initially, its state is unmanaged, and so it's basically like just a kind of it's just an in-memory object. It becomes managed when you actually add it to the Realm.
Yeah.
And so we can kind of show what that looks like, but that's what this is managed here is demonstrating.
So for developers, is a Realm? I mean, it's the company, but is a Realm like my database on disk then essentially?
Yeah.
Like my Realm is. It's like Minecraft, like you're in my realm, I guess. Like so, if something is in the realm, it's in the database. If it's not, then it's just another object in memory. Am I stating that correctly?
Yes, yeah. Okay. And so, the realm is, it's actually a single file. And, we can show kind of, as we look at the demo, you can actually introspect the file. We've got a little browser application.
Oh, cool.
But it's a single realm file that is the database. And so when you take an unmanaged object and you add it, it's going to write that and persist it on disk as well.
All right. So we got the entry, and then I assume you probably I see this is a xamarin.forms application.
Yep.
But you can work with any Xamarin application.
Yeah.
Yep. And so I'm used to my model, and then you got some view models and stuff like that, I assume, right?
Yeah. So if we go over.
Yeah. Walk me through it.
Yeah, so we've got kind of the basic view here. Why don't I run it so you can actually see what this.
Oh, that's good. And this looks like just standard XAML, right? So it doesn't really matter. Like I just have these entries. I have a title, and I assume I'm not really doing anything special in the database. There's no special Realm markup that I need to insert.
No, this isn't like the add entry command here is what we're binding to in the view model over there. So this is nothing kind of Realm specific in that.
Cool.
So so this is the basic application. If I go here and click add, I can just give my journal entry an ID. So test. There you go. And so if we go over, kind of look at the view model code, when I actually I'm adding that journal entry into the realm. This is what it looks like here. And so the key aspect of working with realm objects is that every interaction or write that you're doing with realm, or any change to the object, needs to be done in a write transaction.
Gotcha.
And so that some developers come and they say, oh, why do I have to use these transactions?
Yeah.
But there is a very big secondary benefit of having this transaction-based model, which is the database is basically it's ACID compliant, and it also is crash safe. And so,
what does that mean, ACID compliant? I've heard of that before, but I don't fully.
Well, it kind of means a number of things, but I mean, it's basically that you have like a stable view of the database, no matter which thread you're on.
Oh, okay.
And so it's just basically a number of different properties the database has that make that prevents it from having kind of like corruption or any sort of.
So if your UI thread and a background task is on a different thread, it doesn't really matter because of the transactions. Are they stacked essentially, like first in?
Well, so what we say is that the database actually has what's called a multi-version concurrency control system.
Sounds amazing.
Little in the weeds.
Sounds great. I like that.
But basically,
sounds cool.
What happens is the database in itself is essentially just a B tree.
Okay.
If you want to visualize it, and so when you create a new transaction, what happens is there's a new root of the tree that's added, but any other thread that's doing reads, because the writes are not blocked by reads, continue to look at all the data that's in the kind of the previous root.
Gotcha.
And so you can add all your changes in that transaction, and then it's actually going to write it down to the disk, call an fsync command, so that it is actually fully on the disk.
Yeah.
And only after that has happened do we advance to kind of the new root of the tree. Okay. And so the key point is that if like suddenly your phone died or something happened, and that other transaction was kind of partially complete, the original root of the tree is still there, and so the database, you're never going to get corrupt data.
Got it.
And so it's a little in the weeds, but using write transaction actually is very beneficial in terms of like the durability of the data itself.
So I see that. So I have this realm thing. What is this realm thing? This realm. I see underscore realm. What is?
So that's how you actually like interact with the database itself. And so we're kind of adding it here as a
singleton.
Yeah. Well, no, not really. So
looks like a singleton.
Yeah, looks like it. So the thing with Realm is all like basically accessors, as I would call it. So whether you're working with the database as a whole, which is what this realm.get instance is, or you're working with any sort of Realm object that you've gotten from the database, all of those are thread specific. And so if I was on a background thread, I would also call realm.getInstance.
Got it.
And I would have an object specific for that thread.
Got it.
So there's kind of, you never want to pass realm objects or across threads.
So a good example is if I have maybe a sync service in my background, or I'm doing some data processing in a background Android service. In that service, it would have its own get realm instance. Or if I did task.run realm.get instance, but everything here is going to be on the UI thread, so you can store that one around.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing here. So you never want to pass realm objects directly across threads. Now we actually do offer the capabilities to do that. So you can. There are ways to pass objects across threads, but you can't just take an object and directly move it across.
Got it. So now back to the transaction. So when you hit that add in the application, it calls this method. Is it immediately then in the database, in the realm?
Yeah. So
in this add?
Yeah. So when this is when you actually commit the transaction and that finishes, then it's written to disk.
Okay.
So at the end of here, you will have that written actually into disk.
At the end of the add?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you add multiple things? And is it better to add multiple things in one transaction?
Yes, it is. So the other thing is, the transaction gives you in the ACID, the atomicity of being able to say that these two changes need to always be applied together.
Got it.
And so that, that's another benefit of having a transaction system. But yeah, we would recommend to use larger transactions than to do a bunch of really small ones, if you can.
Yeah.
It depends on the
So if
circumstance.
you have 10 items and you're going to delete those 10 items or add 10 items, you would pass the add, I guess, a IEnumerable or something like that, and then it just adds them.
Yeah. If you're looping over, we'd say, put the loop in the, in the transaction itself.
Got it. Now, the other question I had was this gets added in and it's stored immediately. So if I close the app, open the app, you're just good at this point, essentially, right? Cool. And then you're just moving to the back to the other page. Boom.
Yeah. So
Easy.
yeah,
Easy peasy.
pretty straightforward interaction in this application. Now there's a lot of other things that are kind of more hidden here because this is a forms-based application. So how the kind of querying that's happening in terms of reading the data and stuff is a little bit more hidden from view.
Yeah. Now if you go to on the details page, I enter it. Were you passing the text over to it, or how did that? So you tap on that, right? And are you when you're typing? I don't see that you're doing. Are you just writing the typing to the realm object?
Yeah, just setting it right on the property itself.
And then
so
you save and this is where the commit happens.
Yeah, so that's where the commit is.
Oh, so you created the entry when you hit that and you pass that entry to this page. So that transaction's opened. This is blowing my mind. Okay, so that thing is opened, and then so you're doing live data binding to that entry, and then when you hit save, then it commits it.
Yeah. So
you don't have to set it in the save. Like you're not setting any properties. You're just typing to it, and it just knows.
Yeah, pretty much.
And I didn't see any. I didn't see any iNotify property change or anything like that. Is it done for me, or how does that work?
Yeah, so I mean that's all from the kind of the binding itself, and so we tap into that automatically. So that's going to be setting it for you, and so as you commit it, that's when it's actually going to get hit the disk.
Got it. So our developers, Xamarin developers, they're used to implementing iNotify property change. They don't have to because you already did it for them.
Yeah, when you're using the Xamarin forms, the data binding, that we plug into that automatically.
Cool. It's just that seems like a huge save in code because I'm just like, and on property change, and on this property change, and on that, and like no, just like strings. They're strings, right? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Cool.
So we actually do support a number of different abilities to kind of listen for changes.
Got it. Yeah.
And so if you're not using a form-based application, we have a number of different APIs where you can basically query the database. With this top code sample is querying all the person objects in the realm, and then it says whenever that query changes, let me know, and we can even pass in. Not this specific API, there's another one that'll pass in like a changes object that'll say, here are the ones that have been inserted, deleted, or modified.
Cool.
So if you're working with an iOS or Android app directly, you can pass this into a list view or a UI table view to do the animations if you're doing this more manually.
Got it.
And then likewise, we support object notifications, so you can get kind of when properties specifically change.
Yeah.
So this is kind of what's beneath the hood with Xamarin Forms, which is kind of doing this automatically for you. But if you're not using that, you can still tap into that same sort of reactive architecture.
Very cool. Very cool. So basically, drop dead simple database. If you're looking for a database, you drop this in, that just works. Data binding done, boom, save, good. And it just seems like, I'm used to transaction based. I used to do that in SQL database all the time. You start a transaction, you end a transaction. I notice you had to dispose. Do you always have to dispose of the transaction, or does the end not dispose it, or does it?
No, I mean once you're done,
It's done.
completing the transaction, you commit it. There's nothing you need to do. Yeah.
Cool. So I guess what's the next step here? So I have the database. Now that same exact app will run on Android too. Can I do advanced things with it? Can I do advanced? Do you guys have link support or have anything like that I can tap into?
Yeah. So that's not really represented there because we're just showing all the different journal entry objects. But yeah, we have a complex kind of query capability. And so we tap in and use LINQ with that. So you can use kind of a similar, LINQ query syntax to work with the database. And so here's some examples of just querying for dog objects where you want puppies or older dogs. And so you can sort them and use a number of different kind of query capabilities. The kind of really interesting thing about this, as I was kind of hinting at earlier, is this kind of lazy loading aspect of the database.
Yeah.
So when you perform a query, and that query object, so like the puppies or old dogs or sorted dogs there, that actually does, underneath, you're not having to actually pull all those objects into memory. So, if you imagine you had like 10,000 objects that match your query, it does not have to actually move all of those into memory. Instead, only when you start accessing the individual objects in the query do you actually start interacting with them. So the memory performance for applications that have tons of data is much, much lower than you would find with SQLite.
That's super cool. You need to see over here. My mind is just every time Adam just like boom, just blows. It's so cool. So that's why if you go back to Xamarin Studio, that's why I was so curious, right? So at the top of your journal entries view model, I noticed in the constructor we had entries realm all. So that's almost just kind of like a pointer to it. Is that the easiest way to say, like, right now this is a query and nothing's happening, so I assume all the objects, like you said, aren't being loaded at that point.
Yeah, so this, when you perform this command, it's not having to move all those objects into memory. Instead, if you had the screen where the objects were much larger than what could fit on the screen, as you're scrolling and trying to call out to get the data, that's when it's actually interacting with it. So it's like extremely efficient.
Live automatic paging for you.
Yes.
Shut your face.
Yeah,
That's so cool.
So with the query thing, like we say in the docs, like we don't support limit because like it's irrelevant. You don't have to paginate when working with it.
That's so cool. Now, so normal CRUD operations, you have add, updates, deletes, normal stuff like that, I assume. Now, one thing I was going to ask too before we get a little bit farther into the weeds is, a lot of our developers are probably used to like async, await type development. I noticed that everything is here just done on this UI thread. Does it matter? Is it so fast that it doesn't matter, or what's?
Well, the vast majority of times you can do it. Now I know that that's kind of a very controversial statement. So in practice, test it for yourself. But we've designed the performance with the memory mapping, lazy loading, all these capabilities that it really can be used on the main thread. Now, there's always going to be an edge case, and so you can very easily switch to a background thread, get a new instance of the realm for that thread and work with the objects on the background thread.
Cool.
And then utilizing those notification capabilities, if you say we're doing some sort of background synchronization on another thread and you make changes, your UI thread can subscribe to those notifications as those changes come in and react to it. So it's very simple model in terms of being able to kind of listen for changes that are happening across threads.
Got it.
And this actually, even more interestingly, works across processes. So if you have like on iOS, like you're using like one of the notification original Apple Watch app, where you have
like a Today widget or something like that.
Exactly. You have different processes. Another process can be working with the realm, making changes, and the other process can actually listen for those changes.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's really slick.
Cool. So Drop-Dead Simple database, I love it. Super easy to work. This is like the shortest amount of code I've ever seen for a database. So now you have something brand new though that I'm crazy. So I want you to I'm so excited. Just go for it. Just go for it.
So this was like the master plan, with Realm all along, and kind of, builds off of this idea that the Realm objects are kind of live and auto-updating. So as you're making changes, they're being synchronized across threads. Well, what we wanted to do is basically say, well, imagine it's not just a change coming from another thread that's updating the object. What if that change is coming from another device or a server? And so, for the past couple years, we've been working on what is called the Realm mobile platform, and it includes a Linux-based application called the Realm Object Server that automatically synchronizes changes.
Got it.
And the really slick thing is you pretty much already know how to use it if you know how to use Realm, because there's not much else more to it in terms of like the client experience.
Got it, yeah.
Every time you make changes to the local database, they get persisted locally on disk, and then the change itself is sent to the object server, and it handles sending it wherever else it needs to go. So very fluid, but the best way to kind of show it off is probably.
Let's see it. I'm ready. Yeah. So it's kind of like so from that description, it seems like it's a real-time database where it happens.
Yeah. So
and yeah. All right. So just go into it. I'm ready.
It's extremely low latency. We basically aren't sending the state of objects around, which is like traditional like REST API, like give me the JSON. Instead, because we control the whole stack, we know the specific changes that have actually occurred, and we send the operations.
Cool.
And it's designed to also be offline first, because from a client mobile developer perspective, your source of truth is the database on disk, and so you're making changes to it, and then asynchronously those changes get sent.
Got it.
And so on the server application, we used what's called operational transformation. It's basically a way to make sure that all the changes get ordered correctly, irrelevant of whether the network has kind of sent them in order.
Makes sense. So if you're on an airplane mode only, you can work with your data, do all your changes, and then sometime later on it just happens.
Yep, just synchronizes. So this is another app that we've got that is the default kind of application to learn about the mobile platform. So it's another task app.
Do I have to bring in a different NuGet package or anything like that into my Realm application?
You actually, let me verify that that's true or not. I think it is all included. Just the Realm and Realm database. Cool. And so the key difference is there is kind of a namespace of sync that includes a number of different APIs. So the thing is, if you don't want to use the mobile platform, you're not using the server, you don't have to. Like, it doesn't change the database itself. It's just other APIs that you can tap into if you want to use it.
Okay.
So running it over here.
It's pretty.
Yeah, a little bit. We put a little more effort into the UI here, but it's task application where you can have lists, and then you can click in and add different tasks here. So to kind of
this is just like a Xamarin iOS application in here. I like that.
Yeah, and it's also using xamarin.forms.
Oh, wow, nice.
Yeah, so the key kind of thing to show off is that, as I was mentioning earlier, we have this Mac application. We are working on a cross-platform version of this, but today the Realm browser is just a Mac application. But it's really cool because you can go in here and you can open up like local Realm database files. So this other one that I had opened is actually the default database from the other application that is saved locally because I'm running it in the simulator.
Yep.
And so I can open it up and have that and kind of see the
data from the app.
Yeah.
Nice little object browser.
Yeah, very, very slick. And so you can use this even with on device. When you're developing, you can go get the Realm file off the device and explore it if you need to.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So are you running Realm on your Mac then? Is that like the server part is now run? So now this app is no longer, it's writing locally, but you're saying you're also running. It's here. This is it.
Yeah.
This here. This terminal is here.
Yeah.
Yes. Got it.
Yeah. So if you download the zip file, the package for the Realm mobile platform, we have a totally free version, which is called the Developer Edition.
Cool.
And so you can run it locally on your Mac, which is mainly just for debugging. But if you're going to use it for production or anything, there's a whole Linux kind of installation. Cool. Very easy. We can show it off with Azure a little bit later. But yeah, for the demo here, I've got it running. It's just a single command. You start it up, runs in the terminal here. What you see after you start it up is that it'll pop open the dashboard. So it's very primitive, basic dashboard at the moment. Some
Makes sense to me. I
kind
like
of basic
it,
stats.
Cool.
You can kind of see all the synchronized realms that you're working with here. You can see all the users that are actually in the server itself.
Cool.
Even check out the logs.
Nice.
So yeah, so this is kind of the UI of
Yeah.
the server itself.
Nice. So yeah, so if you did deploy it to Linux, this is what it would look like.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then the Realm browser thing is installed, and you have and this is what it's talking to essentially.
Yeah, so I've got the server running locally, and so I have connected in the sample app here, Realm tasks. I've logged into this local server,
Yep.
and then I've also, as you can see up here, the synchronized Realm I'm connecting to is connecting to the local host and opening up the Realm file.
So that is on everybody's left. That is the server, and then this is the app. So we're going to insert stuff into the database here, and what we're seeing, I just want so people know, because when you see it, you're going to be like, whoa, cool. This is the server, so it is if you were modifying it on the server or coming from another device.
Correct.
Think of this almost like this is the Android version of it,
Yes,
right? So,
yeah.
And we could have run it if we wanted to. So
Yeah.
All right, so hit me. Now what happens?
So yeah, so if you make a change, let me, I think we might have been a bug.
Connect to the server. There we
Yeah.
go.
Let me connect one more time.
Previous server. Got it.
Yeah. So yeah, so I'm connecting to the local server
Got
here,
it.
opening up the Realm tasks, synchronized Realm. So if I open that up here.
There we go. All right, so we have two tasks on the right-hand side, and then the server, which can be like our server or Android application. And then can you modify the data over in that one, or how does it work?
Yeah, so beneath the hood here, each kind of application has its own copy of the data. And so the browser has its own copy of the Realm, and then the simulator over there has its own copy of the Realm, and then the server running in the background is going to automatically synchronize the changes.
Got it.
So if I go over here and I make a change,
Boom.
you're immediately going to see it on the right-hand side there, and vice versa. So if I go over here, I can undo it and call this task 2, and you can see that
Go real long with it so people can actually see. Go task Xamarin show is the best. And so as it is modifying, those property changes are happening, and it's sending it to the server, and boom. Oh
Yeah.
my goodness.
Yeah, so the nice part about this, because it is a xamarin.forms app, it is basically doing implicit transactions. And so every time there is a property update, it is tapping in to kind of the inner workings of the data binding mechanisms to be able to create a write transaction
Got it.
on every small change. And so that's how you're seeing kind of, these
Real-time changes.
specific character by character changes happening.
That's crazy. And as a developer, I'm not even doing anything. It's just happening.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
the code is the same. The code that we just saw with that data binding, that's the same.
exactly. You're still, just writing to make changes to a Realm object.
Yeah.
Beneath the hood is the async kind of networking that's just doing everything for you.
Yeah.
And so that's really the kind of productivity benefit of. I'd rather not have to write JSON parsing
Yeah.
and making network requests and handling any sort of the error scenarios. I just want to work with kind of like synchronous local APIs and make the UI beautiful or build whatever kind of unique capabilities in the app,
Yeah.
rather than all the data handling that we
Got it.
continually have to rewrite.
Now, if I have, so this has tasks, but what if I had tasks and I don't know what else I would have? Maybe homework. I know it seems like a task. But then I have homework assignments, and those are two objects. Those are two different Realm objects. Am I able to have one that goes to the server and one that's only on the device? Does that work too?
No, not at the moment. So
Okay.
the way it works is like an individual realm is kind of the encapsulation of the data being synced.
Got it.
But the unique nature is that a realm itself is very lightweight, and so while the previous app, we had like the default realm, and we were just kind of putting all the data into a single realm. With the Realm mobile platform, we kind of recommend to think about it a little differently, where you might have several different realms with different data sets. And so, that's how you can kind of synchronize data at different times. And so, like,
Nice.
One part of the app, like the homework feature of the app, might only use the homework realm if the user goes to that area, and if not, it's not actually doing any sort of
Yeah.
synchronization.
Now, what about authentication? Is this just what if often we think of, I have, it's great, I have online, offline data synchronization built right in. We see the numbers update for the count and all that stuff. But often, users want to do per user, essentially. Is it all handled? And
Yeah, so the kind of permissions of how you work with the platform is all around the Realm users. And so the object server has built-in kind of authentication for username and passwords, but then it also supports a number of like federated or external identity systems. And so we've recently added Active Directory support.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
Nice. That's awesome.
So it's pretty slick to actually go and get it implemented. You have to do a couple of things. When you start the server, there's a configuration file.
Okay.
And if we kind of scroll down in here, there's a section called providers.
Oh.
And this is where you can kind of enable the supported third-party providers. And so I've got down here the Azure
cool.
provider that with my tenant ID, because I'm using the Azure Active Directory cloud offering.
Cool. So Azure, so that's brand new. This is hot off the press, hot off the Realm database in San Francisco. So when you just put in your authentication, now what do you do in the app though? You hit this little button, and then I saw this earlier, some AD credentials, right? So you'll put the client authentication in there, and then
So you have to kind of set your kind of client ID, your redirect URI, but basically you create a credentials object, and you use, like there's various different, methods that we support, and so you can create a credential that's a Facebook credential, a Google credential, or an Azure Active Directory credential.
Nice.
And so, for this, we're basically using the Azure kind of SDK to go out and get the access token. And then once the client has the access token, it passes it into Realm's APIs to send that access token to the Realm server and say, hey, this is my identity through Azure. Please verify it.
Yeah.
And if it's verified, then you become a Realm user.
Cool.
So
and you said, and if users, if me, I'm just like, I don't even want any social auth. I just want a username, password type login. You just said it's done for you automatically, just done.
Yeah, that's built in to the
Super
platform.
cool.
So instead of creating a credential where you're using Azure, you'd be just creating a credential with a username and password.
Nice.
And then there's a register and login kind of methods associated.
So how do I get this platform thing? You said it's free. There's a developer edition. How do I get it? Because you're running it locally. How do I first do that?
Yeah, so the number one place again is to go to the website,
Yeah.
and so you basically have two options. You can go download it locally on your Mac, get it up and running really quickly, or alternatively, you can go over to the Linux install, and so we support basically a couple different flavors of Linux: Red Hat Enterprise and CentOS and Ubuntu.
Yeah.
And so these are the extent of the installation commands here. We also have AWS AMIs also available, but the easiest way to do it is to get your Linux VM up and running, and then we just go through a couple of these commands. So I can run through it. I've got an Azure Ubuntu instance running.
Yeah, so that's actually interesting because we actually have Azure Linux VMs, and I don't have a Linux machine sitting around, but there is some in the cloud. So yeah, I'm super into it because that's cool because. Yeah, just go through it. I'm going to talk through it because to me this is cool because now I have this. I'm already in Azure all day. Right? I'm a huge I've been living and breathing inside this Azure portal, which is crazy and complex and awesome. And so you're saying I can take that realm and just shove it in Azure. Now it's leveraged by the power of Azure and done.
Yeah, so I mean, pretty quick, easy to get up and running through the Azure portal. You just need to start a Linux VM. So I chose Ubuntu version 16.04. So I've got that up and running here. I've got my SSH credentials loaded onto it, so I can kind of SSH in. So if I go over here and connect into the server, now I'm running, on into the actual server.
You are on the Linux VM on Azure.
Yeah.
Cool.
So to actually get this installed, it's just kind of copy and paste these commands, and so we host the actual package on a service called Package Cloud.
Nice.
So that's the first command here, where it's going to go in, set up the repository to actually load in the actual application. So we'll let it run through here.
I love when things are literally just copy this command, do it. Wait till it's done, copy the command, do it, and then done, right? It's so, and there's like, what, 5 steps or something like that?
Yeah, very quick. So we'll kind of let it run through here. Now that the repository is set up, just need to do an apt-get update, make sure I've got all the right packages loaded. And then this is really the one command to get the object server itself. So it's just another apt-get install, if I can do it properly here. So just run through and it'll do its thing. It'll install the actual application. And really the last part is just enabling it. So we tap into system control here where even after restarting the instance, it can start back up. So that's the last part here, is just to enable that and start it up.
Unpacking. Now, this is going to grab the latest version of the Realm server. Does it update automatically? There's an update button? Or?
No, you just do basically the same command, the sudo apt-get install, but instead you sudo apt-get upgrade. And so, yeah, it's instructions all online, but very easy. So you can quickly kind of upgrade as needed.
Nice.
It doesn't automatically do it.
And these are the same commands that you would just run if you did have a local Linux machine, because literally you're just SSH'd into it.
Yeah. So if you're running Linux locally, I mean, you can absolutely do that. So now that I've got it running, the thing that you need to do next is basically connect into it. So by default,
We'll copy that.
Where is my?
If I just tap on the Microsoft Azure, I like how it went to black. Yeah, the big one. There you go.
Okay.
Boom.
So, yeah.
There it is. It's that good old hover and then do it. Yeah.
Yep. So by default, you connect into it by the IP address, but it's through port 9080.
Oh, cool.
So this is the IP that I've got. So if I go over to it here,
This is live. This is all happening live.
assuming I haven't messed anything up.
Yeah.
It's a little slow, but I'm assuming that's just the Wi-Fi here.
Good old MSFT guest account.
Well, actually, I'm assuming I've probably done one thing wrong here, which is what I've not actually opened up port 9080 in the VM. So, okay, that's on me. But yeah, that's one other thing you need to make sure to do when you're setting up the VM, is to make sure that that port is opened. Now you can obviously switch it to a different port. It supports SSL, TLS, so you can have it on port 80 or 443. That's all in that configuration file.
Is there a setting inside of Azure to enable the port, or is it a different command?
Yeah, it is. Offhand, I don't really remember exactly the steps. So I'll just work with kind of like the local instance again. I mean, this is what you're going to get.
This is what you would see.
Yeah.
But, and you can see it's running on 9080. Now, from my understanding, this is going to, you aim to simplify this process too for developers a little bit. So right now, this is kind of the step, but I know Azure has some deployment options. So is the hope to do like a one-button install at some point? Might even be out by the time this recording goes live?
Yeah. So we plan to be on the Azure Marketplace where you can just do more of a one-click and pick the VM, and then it basically does all these steps for you.
Very cool.
With the ports and everything properly set up.
Yeah, and if this was up and running, we open the ports, and then this is exactly what you would see, and then you'd have multiple realms. So does this mean that there's 8 realms open, I guess, right? And then that's like kind of the connections and the realms that are happening.
Yeah, it's just some basic stats. We're actually going to be drastically improving this pretty soon. So hopefully it looks a little different later. But you can also navigate over and see the different realms that the server is managing. And so as you can see, I've got kind of 2 realm tasks. realms there, and so those are for 2 different Azure users that I had logged in on, and so those are being managed. Some of the others are related to the permission system, and so you can kind of change permissions and share your realms.
Cool.
So Alice over there could say, "Hey Bob, I want you to work alongside me and collaborate on the same data."
Yeah, cool.
And so Alice could share her realm copy of realm tasks. So there's basically it enables kind of fluid, real-time collaboration among users.
Cool. So drop that simple database, drop that simple data synchronization, online, offline support, Azure AD support, soon one button click to install off to Azure. That's amazing. It's mind-blowing. I can't wait. I'm going to start building all my stuff with Realm. Anything else you want to tell the people, Adam?
No, I think that sums it up. So, I mean, once again, if you've got any questions, we are very active with support. So, you can go to the GitHub repo, file an issue. You've got any sort of problems arise. Our documentation's all in realm.io. So that's just the best place to start if you're interested.
Perfect. We'll put all the show notes and the links down below. Check them out. Go to realm.io. Start building awesome stuff. Tell Adam about it. Start tweeting about it. Do all that good stuff. Until next time, thank you, Adam, for coming on all the way up from San Francisco. Until next time, I'm James Montemagno. This is The Xamarin Show.